Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves. I'm your host, Ike. I'm here with Lucas. Say hello, Lucas.
How's it going, Isaac / Ike?
It's going pretty good.
Good. Glad to hear it, man.
Do you have a favorite dad joke?
Favorite dad joke? Yeah, I was trying to think of this one. What's your favorite dad joke? I couldn't think of one.
What do you call a fish with no eyes?
What?
A fish. An oldie but a goodie.
There's a good one from... Yeah, what is this one? It's about another fish one. This reminded me of the fish thing. What is it? There are two fish swimming along, two younger fish swimming along, and an older fish swims by and goes, "Hey, nice water today." And the younger fish keep going along, and they go, "What's water?" So I guess that's one of my favorite ones.
Do you have a favorite underutilized word?
Underutilized word would be lolling.
You don't mean laugh out loudening, do you?
No, I don't. Yeah, I mean lolling as sort of hanging there limply, like your tongue lolling out of your mouth. Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite underutilized words.
So often you would find an old dog lolling on a couch?
Sure, something like that, yeah.
Do you have a movie you'll never skip when channel surfing?
I feel like the Oceans movies, like Ocean's 11.
Oh yeah,
come on pretty often, and those are fun.
That one is that intro to outro. It doesn't really have like a dead beat in it. It is so hard to turn that one off. There's never a moment where you're like, okay, well, that was cool. It's just cool.
And the music's really fun. And yeah, they're a blast.
Just bangers all the way.
Yeah.
Growing up, what was your favorite book?
A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin.
Yeah.
She's a favorite of mine. She's still to this day. I even reread it recently, and it was even better than I remember.
In the original trilogy, growing up, did you have a problem understanding? I'm trying to remember if it's the end of the first one or the third one, where like the main character goes to like the end of the plane of existence and like fights himself.
I don't remember if I had trouble understanding it. I just remember I loved the book.
Oh yeah. Myself included. I just remember the ending of. I don't remember if it's the first or the third one. I think it was like 10, and just like being like,
the first one.
What? It's the first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just being like, what the fuck? Just like
when
being
he
lost.
Sails out. Yeah, he sails out into the end of the world. Yeah, it's amazing.
Sails out until there's no more sea and walks a bit. Yeah. It's trippy as shit. Sorry for the slight spoiler. Still totally worth the read, folks.
No, it puts Harry Potter to shame, IMO. But
if you had to evacuate your house, what's the first thing you would grab?
Probably my magic cards, honestly.
Easy to pick up, financially worth more.
Yeah.
Fun fact out there for you and the fans at home. I think it was the Black Lotus per pound is worth more than like platinum or any other current material that's been harvested.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I was trying to think what it most recently went for. A mint, was it like $100K for a mint Black Lotus, or am I?
Yeah, like I think like a like an in good condition Beckett rated black, like Alpha Black Lotus. I think it went for like $100,000 or something like that relatively recently.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is full on cocoa nuts.
Yep.
Is there a best piece of advice you've gotten over the years that really, kind of sticks with you?
Yeah. Focusing on the things you can control versus the things you can't control, and spending a lot of time recognizing what are things you can control versus what you can't control. So, for example, as a musician, I try really hard to just focus on the music and my own craft, as opposed to, streaming numbers or who I'm going on tour with, or things that are largely out of my control.
Totally.
I just that's been centering for me.
Yeah, I remember growing up and hearing that. I don't remember if it's a biblical passage or like a sex kind of chant, SECTS, by the way, for those of you that have dirty minds. But it's, Lord, give me the serenity to understand what I can control.
Grant me the serenity, to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Yeah, the serenity prayer.
Yeah, it truly is one of those ones that, if you want to diss religion, that's all up to you. But there's sometimes they got it right. I don't know if they copied it from a different whoever, but that one is an all timer.
Yeah, I'm in AA, and that's what they open and close every meeting with.
So okay. Wow, I didn't know that.
It's a big one.
Yeah, it truly is a game changer.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you have a favorite anecdote that you like to tell?
Favorite anecdote that I like to tell?
And you find yourself at a party or meeting somebody new, and it's just got legs, and it's just your go-to.
A go-to anecdote. When I went to an arts high school, and it was a public school, but you had to audition to get in, and so there were dancers and actors and painters and musicians, and I was really kind of getting bullied my freshman year, but I was getting bullied in sort of a very arts high school way.
I'm just imagining West Side Story. That's all I can imagine. I know it's cliche, but yeah.
I literally had, guys shouldering me in the hallway and calling me, any sort of expletive you can think of, but with unitards on underneath what they were wearing. And not that there's anything like that's cool. Like ballet's cool. It's just not the typical high school bully,
It's so surreal and peculiar. Yeah.
Yeah, and one day they all sort of circled me during lunch, and they were like, "Why don't you come down to the parking lot with us, Lucas?" And I was like, "No." And they were like, "Well, all right then." And I was like, "Really? That's it? Like I just get to leave?" And I just walked away, and that was it. So
I was really hoping they came up and there was Lucas.
Yeah,
gotta come to that.
Exactly. Yeah, they all broke out into song. It was hilarious. They were so pathetic.
As far as bullies go, that's got to be the best to have. The ones that you can just be like, "Nah, son," and they're like, "All right," and it's like walking. And then
they just gave up. It was hilarious. I was like, "There's 8 of you. I'm not going to like. What do you think? I think I'm just gonna walk down to the parking lot with you."
Oh my gosh, that's tremendous.
Yeah.
If you could guarantee one of your dreams would come true, which one would it be?
Woo. Guarantee one of my dreams would come true. I would love to play. Right now, one of my big dreams is to play with a live orchestra, like a full symphony orchestra.
Oh,
that's a big dream of mine. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be something. I mean, not only to do as like an accomplishment, but I can't, like, having played in big musical groups and stuff like that, just that feeling, especially like if you were in front and they were behind you, that feeling of just energy like surging through and past you would just, oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm getting
what musical groups have you played in? Big musical groups?
It's like bands in like high school and junior high and stuff.
Very
like
cool.
That. Yeah.
But what'd you play?
Everything that was brass but wasn't French horn. So I wasn't the cool eclectic brass player, but everything else I put my lips on.
That's a tough one, French horn.
Which is really weird because it's the only instrument my grandfather played, so I'm kind of inverted on him in that regard, I guess.
Mm.
If you could work any of the jobs you've done over the course of your life, but get paid the same as the job where you made the most, which job would it be?
I worked as a summer job. My parents would take me out to Massachusetts every year, and I would work at this the Texaco gas station that was on a dock. So you were filling boats and cars.
Yep.
It was a very mellow job, and you were kind of with the locals and just kind of chatting and filling up people's cars and washing windows and catching ropes on the dock. And it was pretty mellow as far as jobs go. And there was a married couple that ran the place, and still are to this day, the coolest bosses I've ever had. So probably that job.
That sounds sweet for sure.
Yeah.
Very like A24, slice of life kind of movie vibes I'm getting.
Yeah, it was as far as like you're in high school and you have a summer job. It was probably as good as it gets.
Speaking of high school, what do you regret not having done or tried before you graduated high school?
I like that you assume I've graduated high school. I appreciate that.
Am I giving you undue credit?
No, I barely graduated. Before having graduated high school, I just wish I would have mellowed out a little bit. I just
a little high tension.
Yeah, I was so everything was so probably drop out of high school is what I wish I would have done before graduating high school, because looking back I'm like, that was such a bad environment for me to be in. I mean, I hate the movie Whiplash, but it was kind of similar to Whiplash. I was literally a jazz drummer at a competitive arts high school, and I had some really, really toxic teachers, some really good ones too, but some really awful teachers, and the environment was just competitive, and it started to feel, wasn't feeling creative by the end of it. It was feeling miserable.
Yeah. Just like pushing yourself through it as opposed to creating. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So when you watch a movie like Whiplash, does that like kind of trigger you, or is that kind of cathartic to like look back on at what you've kind of escaped or forged through?
Have you ever seen those like those YouTube videos where it's like real life bank robber talks about movies with bank robberies in them?
Yeah. Love those.
Yeah,
Can't get enough.
Yeah, they're great. There's one where a drummer talks about Whiplash, and Whiplash is an example of them just getting all the details so wrong. It was hard for me to watch in the sense that like they could have put in 10% more effort just to make it realistic, as opposed to, they're supposed to be this like elite jazz college, and they're playing high school jazz charts. And it's just kind of embarrassing, or just the way the music is all set up. You can tell there was not like a lot of input from real musicians, for the most part. Or if there was, I feel like they could have just tried a little harder. It's as a jazz musician, I don't know a ton of jazz musicians who are like, oh, that movie's awesome. When you watch it, it's just the details are so off that it takes you out of it the whole time. You're just laughing the whole time. Like there's one part where he's playing the drums like so crazy, and he starts like bleeding all over the drum set. It's like, if you're a jazz drummer and you're fucking bleeding all over your drum set, it's like, the analogy I use is like, that's like if a painter was painting so hard that he started bleeding with the brush on the brush, you would just be like, come on, this is ridiculous. Like it's not far off from that. So watching it, I was just like, the feeling I could relate to. They got a lot of the feeling of being a young kid in a jazz program, that where he like breaks up with his girlfriend because he needs to do nothing, but he can't enjoy anything because he's not constantly working. It's like there is so much pressure, and being a jazz musician has become such an academic thing, and that it just is a really depressing way to live as a young kid, I think.
So they got the vibe right, just the facts are wrong, basically.
Yeah, and so it really it makes it hard to immerse myself
for a
in
couple
the film.
different reasons. It's hard to watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the most bizarre fact that you know to be true?
I guess one thing that people should know is that that I think is kind of a bizarre thing that is also true, is that anytime you stream a song on, say, Spotify, and I believe the number is either the musician gets either 0.003 or 0.006%
0.007
of a penny, 0.007% of a penny.
Yeah.
per stream, which is a depressing and bizarre fact.
Yeah, so I think I've given you like 14 cents. You're welcome.
Well, thank you. I will take it. Yes, gratefully.
Woo! Yeah, look at those.
Look at you coming out with the correct percentage. So maybe that's not as much of a little known fact as I thought it was. But
so bizarre background fact about me is I drove Uber and Lyft one time, or for a scant month or two in San Francisco. Okay. And I picked up one of the guys that was a higher up at Spotify.
Gotcha.
And I drove him somewhere. Fill in the blank. This weekend was so great. I spent 13 hours doing...
I've been sick, so I was lying in bed. I don't know if I would say it was so great.
No. Like a theoretical, not what you actually...
Oh, not just a literal weekend.
Yeah.
I spent 13 hours. I don't know. The corny answer would be, I do love being in the studio. I really, the recording studio, to be more specific, is really fun for me. And I don't get the guilt that I get for, playing 13 hours of Magic.
Yeah. You're investing in your future by doing 13 hours in the studio. Yeah.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, it's much more boring than 13 hours of Magic, but it's at least a little more rewarding, I would say. So, working in the studio, it's not something I get to do all the time. So it feels like a privilege to me when I get to do it. Totally. And probably recording.
Awesome. What's something you see in someone else that makes you want to be their friend?
I'm definitely attracted to people who are, for lack of a better way to put this, fully themselves and sort of appear to be comfortably themselves. Mm-hmm. And they own
their authenticity.
Yeah. I like weirdos for sure. And I'm definitely, I find myself attracted to people with wild stories and just who are wild people themselves. But I definitely... I like people who exude a certain kind of honesty that you can't really fake.
Yeah. Same here. It's definitely... that's actually kind of one of like the tent poles of this podcast for me, is somebody that is very much, themselves. And like, I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but there was, I'm trying to get him on as a guest, everybody out there, so you all can meet him, but there was a friend of mine drove down to a Magic tournament with that was like an hour and a half, 2 hours away. And as we're driving back, like 5 minutes into the drive, I don't know how it comes up, he starts talking about the lore of one of the older Magic sets, and he starts talking about the Brothers' War, which is, I think about... I want to say that's like during Visions and stuff like that, like way back in the old days of Magic. And like, they're written books if anybody wants to read them, and apparently they're really, really good. But our friend starts going over them, but he is so embodied and passionate about it that he doesn't stop talking, and none of us interrupted him for 2 hours. We left, like we went wire to wire, just talking about it the whole entire time, and was just so unabashedly excited and such a great storyteller that nobody even had the thought to interrupt him. It was just true passion, unbridled, and just let fly. And it was something to behold in so many different ways. And like that's one of the reasons that this kind of came about. So very much in the kind of same vein of just somebody who's super eccentric or super about their thing, and in this way that is unapologetic and just like fully baked into like the the cortex of their soul. And it's just it's the business. What do you wish you had started sooner?
Piano. I did start it really young, but then I stopped. And I don't really blame myself for stopping. As a music teacher now, I think the way we teach kids, not to get up on my high horse, but kids already have a ton of shit on their plate. They basically work 9 to 5s, but they're 8 to 3s. Yeah. And then we have them come home and we're like, cool, here's this other academic thing you're going to do. And we expect you to practice every day on top of all your other shit.
While you're still figuring out your own identity, your own
Right.
sexuality, who your friends are,
Sure.
what friends are,
Sure,
what you
but
want to
even
do with
younger than
life.
that, even younger than your own sexuality, like 7-year-old kids in elementary school, and then adding this thing on there that they don't really understand. They don't see why it's special or important, and all of a sudden they're like learning, these just totally mundane songs on piano, and it's totally unfun and miserable and academic, and they're learning scales, and you don't know why or what.
Yeah.
It's just we just expect kids to just do it because we say so.
I think that's the
And
other part too, is that, like, at least for me and a bunch of people I know with piano, you're made to learn it by somebody else. It's not a choice, or not
Right.
as much a choice as it,
Right.
ought to be, or whatever.
Yeah, so I mean, I do think that coming back to it on my own is the only way I was ever going to do it. I don't really have. I try not to have like, oh, if only I'd done this type thoughts, because I have to kind of do things on my own terms, especially with music. And so coming back to it now as an adult, I have so much more reverence for it. I enjoy it. I enjoy learning the boring stuff because I know how it applies. And I have a great teacher who I love, and I can sort of guide into teaching me the stuff that really matters to me. So, but yeah, I often, when I get into the thinking of, oh, if only I'd done this, it's typically because I'm typically thinking of, I wish I'd learned a melodic instrument earlier in life.
So you're talking about coming back to it on your own terms. Were you not necessarily forced, but cajoled into doing music, or maybe just piano, by your parents?
Yeah, they put me in piano lessons when I was really young, maybe like even as young as 5 or 6, because I started playing drums when I was 7. But drums were my own choice, and they were very. It takes a supportive family to
To have a drummer as a child?
Yeah, to not only have a drummer as a child, but to buy you drums and then pay for drum lessons for, from the age 7 to 18 when I left the house, so it's like, it's they were very supportive, and by the time I was a teenager, I was practicing every day for sometimes hours at a time. So they were as supportive as it gets.
Yeah, that's awesome. How
Yeah.
were they when you voiced your disinterest in wanting to continue piano?
I don't remember. I feel like it was, my mom with us, she would push us, but if it became this like relentless, it's like pulling teeth type situation, she wouldn't force the issue for longer than what felt reasonable, I think. At least for piano. It was the same way with going to church. Early on, she tried to get us to go to church, and sort of weird household religiously. My dad being Jewish, and her being Christian. She was trying to take us to church, and we just bitched and moaned so often that we literally, talked her out of going to church after a while, and we
You
didn't have to do
kvetched
it
hard
anymore.
enough.
Yeah,
that-
exactly. Yes.
That's pretty awesome, and understanding of her to kind of see those changes in you. I mean, granted, it sounded like you had to be really vocal with the second one, but see and appreciate that and just be understanding. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, I have good parents for sure.
So on the flip side of what you wish you had started sooner, what do you wish you had ended sooner?
There's a musician I like, King Cruel, and I've heard him talk about how he just left school. He just there were truancy officers coming after him and his parents, and he just did not care. And when I was in high school, I really wish I had the sort of I don't know what you would call it, backbone,
Gumption.
presence of mind, gumption, yeah, to just not do it. It was, I really think schools can for certain kids can be, really awful experiences. And I was really having a tough time, particularly in high school. And it would have made I know why I didn't leave. It would have made my family life hell. My parents would have been freaking out, and in a panic. But, yeah, I think, sometimes I wish I just left, whether that meant getting my GED or whatever it is. But I was, super unhappy as a young kid in school.
So is that a personal thing, or is it like a common condemnation of the system? Would you recommend, like, at what kind of dispensement ratio would you recommend people leave school? Or is that something that was just for you specifically?
Yeah, I would never, I mean, personal for sure. Definitely also a condemnation of the system. I think we have this, again, here's me up on my high horse, but we have this we do have an antiquated school system that was sort of developed in the Industrial Revolution and hasn't really been updated since. Yeah, so much, especially if you're in the public school system, even though I was in this unique, really interesting school, it was still under the Los Angeles County public school system that is so much of my education was just like busy work, filling out packets.
Yeah.
I remember just getting all these fucking packets that were just, yeah, the teacher would just check if you checked the right boxes, and it's just, there's something dystopian about the whole thing. Scantron testing, and it's like my grade. It's not even like I was this. I had a 3.5 GPA. I was like a fine student. I wasn't. No, it's not. I was like okay. It's not like I was failing all my classes.
3.5 is like A's and B's. That's pretty solid.
Yeah. I was doing okay. I wasn't failing any classes, but it was, the process of it was so miserable and soul sucking. My school also went from 8 to 4. So I'd be up at 6 to get there. I'd take the public transportation to get there. So there's no school bus, and my sisters and I went to different schools, and it would take an extra hour.
Ugh.
And this isn't a unique story. I think this is a lot of kids' experience. I think a lot of kids are really miserable in school and getting traumatized and turned off in a lot of ways from learning. Their brains are getting fucking fully turned off. And so for me, it took me a couple of years to remember, I'm actually a curious person. I like learning. I'm interested in things. And I felt so turned off by the end of the experience. So even from music, which was what I was there to be doing, I felt it just turned into this pressure cooker.
That's a great way of putting it, yeah.
Yeah, so
Lucas sous vide.
Exactly. Yes, I was sous videing at this high school, and everyone is different, and I'm not saying everyone should up and leave their school. And some kids were thriving there and having a great time, and there are kids who don't have this experience. I think there is sort of a one-size-fits-all approach to education, and
totally, yeah. It is
obviously just
it is
doesn't
not
work.
very catered. It is very much just the in and out of of education.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, well, we have burgers. Would you like that? No, then you can leave. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So this might just kind of be the same question with different words, but if you could go back in time and tell yourself one sentence, what would it be, and when would it be?
I don't know. I don't know that it's funny. Anything that I could tell that version of myself, I don't know that version would have listened. My younger self was so sort of one-track mind, and just it was hard to get through to me at that time. So maybe I would say exactly what I'm saying now. But yeah, it's similar to what we were talking about a second ago. I took everything so seriously, which was both a good thing and a bad thing.
High school is life and death, man.
Yeah, it felt
It's like
like it.
it's like the Hunger
And
Games except real.
yeah, yeah. Maybe take this less seriously.
Dude, this doesn't matter. Yeah, you won't see them in like a year. You'll never see them again.
Yeah, this won't be your life forever. This is a 4-year sort of
Bit.
weird little cryo chamber that you're in, and I do have one or two friends who are lifelong friends from high school. I'm still in the city I grew up in, which is Los Angeles. But I wish I took things a little less seriously when I was there, maybe. Yeah.
All right. Now, and most importantly, if you could make sure listeners of this podcast heard one song, which song would it be?
I would say "The Electrician" by the Walker Brothers. I credit it as a Scott Walker song, but it is technically by the Walker Brothers, which was his first musical endeavor, I guess. It is a truly bizarre and unique piece of music that I think everyone should hear.
Awesome. Well, with that, we're going to throw it to our first break. Feel free to stick around and enjoy the totally real commercials, or take a minute to enjoy The Electrician by the Walker Brothers, or just fast forward. Either way, see you in a jiffy. Have you ever just looked at fried carbs on a plate and thought, I need to eat those, but it doesn't taste all that appetizing? Introducing catsup. Catsup is a sugary and red syrupy paste that'll overshadow any unappreciated taste. Simply douse the unpreferred tasting object and ingest. Mmm. Thanks, catsup. And welcome back. Lucas.
Ike.
Do you perhaps have a passion for us?
Yeah, I would say my passion right now, under sort of the umbrella of music, would be I'm really enjoying the recording process and making records. Anytime I finish making a record, I just want to start making the next one.
When did you first when are you remembering recording your own first music, whether it be music you created or just in high school playing a song that you liked and recording yourself?
Yeah, I wasn't recording myself as much as I should have been, or could have been in high school. I remember being in some high school band and winning a battle of the bands, and the first prize was recording time and like a Guitar Center gift card or something like that. But we got to record in some crummy studio way out in the valley in one of those I don't know how to describe these spaces, but it almost feels
back
like
of a trailer park rest stop.
Kinda. It's more like rows of sort of unlabeled workspaces,
Yeah. Just like
that look like storage units more
a
than anything
U-Haul
else.
Of closets with a door that
Right.
has a little
Right.
glass peephole. Yeah, absolutely.
Sure, yeah. And we worked with these two kind of bro-y guys, and they gave us this really... I still have the recordings. They're very bright and harsh and brittle sounding, overly clear. Yeah, that was an early recording session, but the process is exciting. You get to... I mean, there's something about it where when you're doing it well, you can... You're sort of making this thing that is greater than the sum of its parts, I guess, and that...
Yeah, it's like using musical Legos, right? You're taking all
Yes.
these... You're taking all these segments and stacking them on top of each other to create more than just a pile of bricks, to create, a castle, a dragon, a Harry
Right.
Potter broom. Who cares?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it's really exciting when it's going well, and when you start to get good at it, or have people around you who are really good at it. Um, you get to you get this sort of pleasant surprise of it sounding better than you ever could have imagined, and that's a really rewarding experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so great when you do something that when you hear its parts, you're like, all right, that sounds good. But, it's just a bag of flour. It's just,
Right.
a cup of milk or whatever like that. But when it goes into the oven and comes out, you're like, motherfucking cookies, yo. And just like,
Right.
it's the biz. That's freaking
Yes.
awesome.
Yes, I like the cooking analogy too. Even for music, sometimes I'll be in the process of making something and I'll say, "Oh, this just sounds bad," and then I tell myself, "Well, if I were cooking something and I were halfway through cooking a raw piece of meat or baking a cake and I tried it, would I judge it at that point?
Yeah.
I'm halfway through the process. I'm not done."
It's like judging a kid who's like 8 and being like, ugh, I guess I
Right.
got to start over again. Like, no. Like,
Right.
give it a little bit of time. He's 8.
Yes.
Like,
Exactly. Yeah, it's and we're all, as human beings, works in progress. I believe, as you said to me the other day, work in progress. So,
might not be working that much on my progress, but
well, progress, not perfection.
yes. So when when you were saying when it's running good, it's just this awesome, piece of, it sounds like almost like locomotion where you're just in this rhythm and you're just chugging along and you're just like laying track and just getting there. This metaphor is not holding up that much under scrutiny.
No, I know what you mean.
But when it goes bad, do you still find you still love it, or is it, just an acceptable, annoying aspect of like cleaning up after, you spend time in the kitchen where it's like, that's not why you came here, but it's still like the cooking aspect is still worth the cleaning.
There are parts of it that are as miserable as almost anything else. I mean, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. There are parts of it that are wildly unfun and stressful and unbelievably boring. I mean, making music is so patience testing, and recording music is even more patience testing. Just because you're kind of, sometimes you're going over the same little piece of music dozens of times and just trying to problem solve, or you get stuck, with whether it's a troubleshooting thing or, a hardware thing where you can't figure out why you're not getting sound out of a certain mic, or where this buzzing is coming from, or whatever it is, There are parts of it that are incredibly boring and frustrating, and I think that there's a common misconception, especially in the world of creative stuff. Sometimes people from the outside looking in, or even people from the inside, will say, "Oh, I'm doing what I love. It's all good. It's all this. It's all my passion.
If you do what you
I
love, you'll never work a day in your life."
Right. And that's a no. That's my grandpa would always say that, and then sort of by proxy, my dad in some ways. But it's a lot of it is grueling, boring work, and I think so. Yeah, there are aspects of it that I really, really don't enjoy or look forward to, and there are parts in the process that I wish I could skip.
It kind of, what you're saying kind of reminds me of this metaphor that like was a better explanation of why to go after your passion. Because that idea of you'll never work a day in your life is just utter horseshit. It's just not
Right.
talking to people that do their dream job. They're just like, yeah, that's not how this works. I think
Right.
the better metaphor that I've heard is that a great job, or following your dream or your passion, when you get it, it's like a good marriage. It's not that there isn't problems or difficulties that you deal with. It's that you love the person so much and you've built this thing and you care about them, that doing it isn't as hard as it would be with somebody else.
Yeah, I love that. that analogy makes a lot more sense, and it's much easier to get through miserable moments when you ultimately care about the big picture. You know, when you're working, say, a restaurant job or retail, it's
Do
the
not
miserable moments
give
aren't
a
quite as
fuck.
right. The miserable moments aren't quite as rewarding.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What would stop you from wanting to record and continue to make music? Is there something conceivable that would come down the pipeline, either another opportunity or a kind of another, blockade or something, like a hoop that you'd have to jump through that would, diminish and or ultimately, remove it?
As of right now, as of right now, there's the things that when I think about like, oh, maybe I can't do this anymore is more big picture, sort of existential, global climate crisis. The hills are literally on fire here in Los Angeles, and sometimes I'm like, well, maybe I won't get to do this for the rest of my life. Maybe like humanity's priorities will shift, and it won't be about being a creative person or whatever it is, or just who knows. I don't. That's the thing I think about the most as I don't know why it feels silly saying that there is a literal climate crisis, but I do feel a little silly being like, well, maybe like we'll all be underwater in a decade and I won't be able to make albums anymore, and that is
well, they won't be as crisp, that's for sure.
Yeah, you'll really feel the reverb then. That is the thing that I'm like, I do feel a sense of urgency to make music out of literal existential dread of like, who knows how long I'll get to do this? Who knows if, even with the COVID stuff, it's unclear for musicians in particular what the future of touring looks like and live shows and all that stuff. And so that, those are the things when I think about stopping making music. They're more outside factors than internal, like, if this sort of thing came along, I might not want to do it anymore. But as a musician, the thing that I think about stopping doing is touring more than recording. Recording you can do at home. You can have a stable sort of home life and maintain making records and recording music yourself, but touring is something that is difficult to keep up, especially as you get older and as your life, as you try to put down roots. Touring stops you from doing that.
If you could continue to make music and make a living that you were acceptable of, would you be bothered if you had to set aside touring? Is that like an aspect you like, or is that something that if it went away, you'd be more than happy?
It's a little column A, little column B. I think that playing live, I would never give up. I think that there's sort of two different worlds you have to live in as a musician. There's the live performance of your songs, and then there's the recorded performance, or almost, and it could come in either order or in tandem. I mean, some bands, as they're making their record, or musicians, whatever, as they're making their record, they will try those songs out live because you get a different perspective from performing them than you do even just rehearsing them live. There's something about playing it in front of an audience where you have a new understanding of that song and how certain elements of it work or don't work. And it's hard to explain why that is. But playing live and recording sort of feed into each other, and you can't it's hard to have one without the other. I mean, Scott Walker, who is I am a huge fan of, and mentioned, the Walker Brothers as the song that I would recommend. He just was so obsessed with the recording process and getting things so specific, and was this sort of known obsessive perfectionist, that he would then not play those songs live. He would not tour or perform those songs, had no intention of even trying to recreate the thing he made on record, because it would be doing it a disservice. Whereas other artists will be like, okay, the live thing is going to be just completely different from the recording, or there's different approaches to those things, but for me they feed into each other, and I'm making this big sort of extravagant orchestral record at the moment right now, and I have no idea how I'm going to do it live. I mean, there's a full orchestra on 11 out of 12 songs, and figuring out how to tour that is, there are creative ways to do it, but it's a whole other ball of wax versus getting it into recordings is something much more feasible, versus turning that into it's like making a movie versus doing a theater production. They're just completely different beasts, and musicians constantly have to figure out how they're going to do both. So that's an incredibly long-winded answer to if would I be okay with not touring ever again. The answer is kind of no. I think I need both to sort of feed into each other.
Yeah.
If I had to pick between one, the touring lifestyle is much harder than the recording lifestyle.
Yeah.
So
You need lemons and water to make lemonade.
Right, exactly.
Do you have a preferred size when it comes to performing? Do you prefer smaller or bigger venues?
Well, who doesn't prefer being in a playing for more people? But I think that the music I make now lends itself to theater-sized venues. If we're talking, I'm a very small artist. I'm still an unknown
like, what,
artist.
5'7", 5'8"?
5'9".
Oh, sorry. Whoa, jeez.
But yeah, I playing in if I were whatever Radiohead sized and could pick whatever venue I would want to play, the best sounding venues are still just theaters. So and that's what my music sort of lends itself to for the most part.
I absolutely agree. The reason I asked is because
you.
I've been listening to there was some podcasts, and comedians were talking about what size they prefer, and there were some comedians that preferred, like Kevin Hart style comedians that prefer like Madison Square Gardens. They want to go as big as possible. And then there was other comedians that really like a 200-person room with a low ceiling. Yeah. And so it's kind of interesting. I wasn't sure how that translates to music.
No, there are musicians who like those intimate settings and will go back to playing, or bands that will want to go back to playing clubs, like small rock clubs, because that's how they're. I've seen like the Pixies at, I think I saw them at the Hollywood Bowl, and it was just weird. It was just like, they're awesome, and I love them, and I love those songs, but it was just kind of
out of place.
It's like this isn't really how this should be presented, I think. So I understand that.
It'd be up there with Lou Reed. It'd be like watching Lou Reed play the Super Bowl. You're like, what are you doing here?
Some of that's a little weird too. He's got some anthems though. He's got some rock anthems.
He could do it. It's just like, I think it's more the subject matter that I'm thinking of. It's like, dude,
sure.
Like, what? Like, not that you sold out, but like, this isn't your people.
No, it's definitely like smoky clubs type guy. But yeah.
What's the biggest misconception about your passion by the wider world, do you think?
About being a musician in general, people still seem to think that it's the 90s, particularly like a touring music, or the 70s even, that touring is like
sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah, or the movie Almost Famous, and that it's this glamorous, fun thing where you get to see the world and play music and get paid while you do it. And my experience of touring has been, I've mostly toured the States, and mostly not on bus tours or or flying. So, that's driving from state to state, and you just kind of see the inside of venues, gas stations, and hotels or motels,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a unfun grind a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Can be rewarding, but I still get people who make comments like about touring in particular, and talk to any sort of mid-level touring musician, particularly pre-pandemic. They're out there killing themselves just to sort of scrape by and make a living, but they have a really hard time putting roots down and it's a constant grind, and you're not really getting to see the places you go to. You're sort of seeing a little snapshot of it.
Yeah, you're not seeing the town, you're seeing the venue.
You're seeing the venue, you see whatever's around the venue sort of briefly, and then you leave. And it's you're just living in venues for extended period of time, and venues aren't always the most pleasant places to hang, and there's a sort of constant old beer smell to most of them.
Yeah.
but yeah, the touring thing, there's a sort of misconception still to this day that it's this glamorous, extravagant thing. I mean, if you get to the Taylor Swift level, it is. You are sort of
dope.
You're sort of you're weighted on handed foot constantly, and you're playing stadiums, and there's this whole sort of industrial complex behind your touring machine, and you are the center of that touring machine. So it's a very different experience, but still sort of a surreal, bizarre, constant grind. Anyway,
do you think your being in AA has changed that experience for you? And was it?
Yeah, no doubt.
So when did you, if you don't mind my asking, when did you get sober in regards to your music career? Was it before or during?
During. I started touring when I was 18, and I got sober when I was 22, almost 23.
How did the experience of being a touring musician, and I mean just also being a musician and a human being in general, but especially with the touring aspect with the band and just that environment, how did you notice it change?
It was, it was quite a while after getting sober that I started touring again. I decided to stop when I first started touring. It was as a drummer, and I was playing for different bands, and I sort of had that was my childhood dream. It was a misconception of my own that touring was this amazing thing that I just wanted to go do, and that I would, less about the sex and drugs and more about the, I wanted to see the world and get paid to do it, and I wasn't seeing the world at all. So when there was a long period of getting this new project, Storefront Church, together, and staying in LA. I was working in a restaurant for a long time and teaching and getting Storefront Church together for a few years. And it was around that time that I got sober, and I had already decided I'm going to stop. At that same time, I had decided, okay, I'm going to stop touring and work on this project. And so then I got sober, and then it was a couple years later before I started touring. So
is there a correlation between you stopping touring as a drummer, getting sober, and starting this other band? Is there a connective tissue there, or are those kind of independent elements that just synced up?
Yes, and yes. They're all in some way related, I guess. I mean, I really had this sort of crisis of faith moment, I guess, or just I was doing the thing that I really wanted. I was playing in a band that I loved when I was in high school. A band I used to play along to their songs, and we were playing for thousands of people, and I was just miserable doing it. It was not what I want. It wasn't what I thought it would be, and what I wanted had changed, and so and I was sort of in some ways. I guess I had made that realization, and I in some ways had to start over. I had to, I never sang before, really. I didn't play, I wasn't a songwriter, and so I had to start. I realized that that's what I wanted to do, and had to start over doing that. And so I was still drinking once I'd made that realization. And the drinking, I didn't realize. I eventually, as I was working on the project, realized that I couldn't sustain my drinking. Got sober, and that ended up helping the project immensely, and just my life in general, and everything in every way. And once I toured sober, touring got easier. Sober,
definitely cheaper.
Way cheaper. And though I now have to support my Magic the Gathering addiction, which is expensive. Yeah. Though there was a time when I was drinking and playing Magic, which was totally untenable. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You're getting different kind of packs every day.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm not sure I answered your question there, but I sort of started this project while I was still drinking, and then
what was the kind of turning point when you looked at the bottle and you're like, you know what, and movie style, tossed it in the trash or threw it out the window? Did you have a moment, however mundane or grandiose, that really kind of cemented it, or was it just this slow growing pang that just...
I won't get into the nitty gritty of that, but I will say that I come from a long line of alcoholics, and have always kind of known and been told by family and friends that I am a part of that grand lineage, and seen it in myself and my own behavior, that I have sort of this very hereditary gene of addiction in me. So when it came time to quit, it was something I always knew was on the horizon for me. And I was with a partner or girlfriend at the time who helped me come to that conclusion.
That's awesome.
And I'm definitely owe her, not even without even realizing she was helping me, but was definitely instrumental in me getting sober.
Last question, I think, on this one is, what changes did you notice that you found yourself having to make moving forward, just as a human being and as an artist, after giving up the bottle?
Giving up the bottle. You make life changes. I mean, your life just looks vastly different. I still go to bars with people or parties, but there are certain occasions or events where the main event or the main activity is the drinking or the, getting high or whatever it is. And those kinds of things, I have a limited amount of patience for at this point. And they're not my scene anymore. So, but I will say my relationships with people are much, for lack of a better word, much more real. I have real friendships and connections with people that the drinking and using was keeping me away from sort of deeper connections with people. And And so yeah, I just have a much better life compared to what it was prior.
Hmm.
And yeah, I guess you'll just have to take my word for that.
Did you find yourself having to cut like any friends out of your life and like kind of like change like that aspect? That's like one of the things I've heard from some people that like go to AA is like one of the hardest things isn't quitting drinking, but it's like quitting who you hang out with and the activities you did. It sounds like you're still able to, go hang out at a bar, drink a glass of water, have a pop or whatever like that, and just hang out, and that doesn't affect you, which is impressive and, makes the process probably a little easier than it would be, for some. But are there, have you had to cut people out? Have you had to like stop hanging out? It sounds like you don't hang out in scenes where it's literally just we're gonna, drink until we pass out, kind of circumstances.
Yeah, there's sort of an organic process that happens. That's one of the first when people, friends who are looking to get sober talk to me about the process. That's one of their first questions, like, can you still hang out with people? Can you still go out? What do you do? It's so ingrained in drinking, and it's so ingrained in our culture, but also in music culture, that people sort of worry about being able to function as a human being without it, which I understand. But yeah, there's an organic process of certain friendships just fall away, and people worry about that before you get sober, but when it happens, it makes sense. You're like, oh, that may have never actually been a friendship in the first place.
It might have been somebody I just held alcohol in my hand while standing around.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was a drinking friend or something like that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm actually grateful for those sort of relationships that aren't in my life anymore. And yeah, going out, being around drinking at this point, I'm 5 years into my sobriety almost. And so at this point, being around it is, I'm pretty used to it. And it's
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Is there a non-obvious aspect that you just love about recording and creating music that most people probably don't know about?
No, I don't think so. I love hearing the finished thing, or when it gets to a point where it's coming together.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most exciting part for me. By the time it's actually done, you've heard it so much that it loses its luster. But there's a point in the middle where it's
You can start seeing it start to like kind of open up like a flower.
Yeah, and you can enjoy it for the song that it's becoming, even if it's not quite done yet. And those are the really exciting points for me, and that's my favorite part.
Yeah, I have to imagine it's kind of like I imagine it's kind of like watching a kid start to actually pedal a bike on their own and like not need training wheels and like like ride around the block. It's like they're not done getting it. Like they're probably gonna fall down at some point, but like the first time they do it, you're like, holy shit, I'm not a freaking parent. I've never like babysat kids really, so I don't really have but like this is the imagination I have of just like, this is going to get old watching them ride their bike. It's not going to be as cool as it is in this moment, but in this moment, the progression, like the trajectory of progression is becoming very visible, and that has to just be super exciting.
Yeah.
So earlier you were talking about when you were drumming with your first band fresh out of high school, that there was like once you got it, it started to, it wasn't, not that it wasn't what you wanted, but it kind of it diminished its value once you obtained this dream that you had. Is the same thing kind of true when you look at the trajectory for your band? Is there like an end goal you have in mind, or are you just enjoying the process and not focusing on the future because obtaining what you lust after just kind of is always a cyclical cycle of, unhappiness?
Well, that's a great question. The goals have changed from when I was 18 versus literally a decade later where I'm 28 now. Also, I should say that when I first started touring, I was in a very toxic, unhealthy band. I found myself as a hired guy with a group of strangers in this sort of whirlwind situation with this insane group of people so it was not only was touring not what I expected it to be, but I was also with this just in a crazy scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of too young to know how to handle it. So there's that. Yes, with my band now, I'm always wary of like, oh, if I just achieve this goal or my dreams, then I'll feel okay. Or I do really enjoy the process. It is just about it's ultimately just about making the thing for me and getting to hear back this thing that I want to make, and the being able to share it with the people around me. That those are the sort of the real goals of the project. Being able to be creatively, having autonomy and people supporting the project and outside help is sort of a long-term goal, meaning like, I'm on a label and I have their support, but more support and, different kinds of support. There are sort of outside things that would be nice, but ultimately I've been able to get by and achieve these sort of, again, goals that I can control, being making the music and getting to share it with my friends and the people around me. That's the real ultimate point of it all for me.
Nice. So you're living in the end game right now as like a kind of a continuous existence.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yes, exactly. I think that there's sort of it's a dangerous thing when you're like, if I just get to this one place,
the magic bullet,
then I'll feel okay.
It's like the magic bullet paradox, where if you obtain this one thing, it'll solve all problems. There is no elixir like that. For those of you out there listening that think there is, be very careful when setting. That's something I have done. That sounds like something Lucas has done, where you set this thing. All right, if I just get this, everything will be okay. It'll solve this problem. That's not a thing, except in medical scenarios. Basically, just not a thing. If you're looking at that as a life goal, like once I get this girlfriend, once I get this girl, once I get this job, once I get this car, it will not. It will for about 5 seconds, and then there will be this. All of that investment you had will be inverted inside of you. This is my experience, at least, of just you built this pinnacle up, and then there's no support, metaphorically, and so it just collapses, and then there's this cavern inside of you where there was all this energy. So you no longer have anything driving towards. The thing you got can never live up to the expectation you set for it, and then you've got this huge hole of desperation and lack of expectation delivered and all that shit, and it will be ready to ride the bottom half or the latter half of that roller coaster down to the stop, because it's going to come fast.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not opposed to goals and having ambitions and things that I would like to have, but ultimately, again, it comes down to a lot of that stuff's out of my control.
Yep.
And the thing that the reason I really the real reason I started the project is because there were things I wanted to hear. There were songs I wanted to hear and sounds I wanted to hear, and
there's this thing you love to do.
The goal is still centered in that.
Yeah, there's this
thing, and I enjoy the process of making it.
This thing you love doing, and you wanted to do it because you wanted to do it, not because you wanted. You didn't want fame. It would be nice, I'm sure. The extra the extra dollar bills and all that.
Well,
That extra point
what's
zero
nice-
zero 0.007%. You know.
Fame is sort of this symptom of things that I want. You know, I want to be able to make records and have them be funded and not have people question, you know, what's going to happen, you know, not have it be like pulling teeth to get things done. I mean, there's always a little bit of that even when you're at the sort of top tier, but I you know, the autonomy to do what I want that comes with, you know, you have to have sort of this I don't know if you want to, whatever, clout or whatever it is to get people in your corner. But I'm still able to do most of what I want without any of that. I think
So you're
for
saying
me, fame is a symptom of good things.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not the good thing.
it's not the good thing. It's the price you pay for the
Yeah.
good thing.
Right.
So you're
In
saying
a lot of ways, yeah.
you're saying Daft Punk did it right. Just wear gigantic metal hats, make the dope music, and then fade into obscurity when you take them off.
Right. When I started the project, there was a long time where I was convinced I would do it anonymously. It just it makes it so much harder to, it's a lot harder to do it that way.
Yeah, there's a reason there's only like 3 people that have made
Right.
it, have done that, and it's
Right.
because it's
Yeah,
not
exactly.
you have to be super lucky and just like kind of catch lightning in a bottle, and then have that been a
Right.
pre-thought aspect, which I'm imagining most studios probably aren't going for.
Right.
Or labels. So switching over from the passionate and the beautiful, what is your preposterous peeve, Lucas?
I have a lot of them, but one that fits your description, I think, is it really does bother me when I'm talking with someone and they'll say, you know, they'll refer to someone that they know I don't know as though I know them. So, for example, if I were talking to someone and they say, "Oh, well, you know, me and Richard went to the beach this weekend," and they know I've never met Richard. I don't know who that is. It's just something about it. It rubs me. It really bothers me, and I will every time make some kind of comment. Oh, Richard. Yeah, I love Richard. You know, whatever it is. You know, like
Classic
but
Richard going to the beach.
classic you and Richard.
Is it worse?
It just bugs me.
Is it worse when it's an ambiguous name like Alex or something like that, where it's like shit, even less to go on? Like just like that could be either male or
It's
female.
just,
or,
it's always bad.
Yeah.
It's always bad. You know, it drives me nuts. Just say, you know, refer to them in a more generic, my friend.
Yeah, my friend Richard.
Whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Or just, you know, there's some sort of something about it. There's something so like, I think maybe, and now I'm just spitballing here, but maybe it's that there's something so self-centered about it, as though like I would, because they know them, I'm supposed to know them.
Yeah.
You know, like there's like, I don't know what it is, but it drives me
It's
nuts.
that like lofty posh ideal of everybody has a Ferrari, like, you know, just like kind of you're diminutive for not knowing who Richard is or not owning
Right,
a
of
gold-plated
course.
Rolls Royce or whatever. Like, yeah, like it's like the new white news anchor lady way of putting you down. Of just like, you know, it's not on the surface, but it's like intentionally written in the bylines of just like go fuck yourself. You're like, wait,
Right.
what? When do you
Totally.
think you noticed this kind of peeve cropping up in your life? Was there like a time? Do you remember a time before you noticed, or has it always been, you know, a kind of indefinitely present thing?
Past few years, for sure, I've definitely put my finger on it. But yeah, indefinitely present for sure.
It's become. It definitely seems like one of those things that, you know, when you're a kid, you're not sure who knows what. So it definitely seems like an adult activity to assume
Right.
in that regard.
Right.
Like kids are so shit at telling stories that they're gonna be like, "So I was with
Right.
Richard, my friend. Do you know Richard? He's the guy with the hat and the
Right,
hair." And it was
exactly.
like,
Yeah.
"No, but I've got a full bio on him now. Continue with this
Yeah.
shit story that I've lost track of."
Right. Exactly.
Oh man, that was good. Freaking Richard.
God damn it. Fuck Richard. That's also the conclusion I always come to is, well, fuck that person. Like,
He sounds like a
hate
dick.
them automatically. Yeah. So.
And with that, we're going to head to our second break. But don't go anywhere, because when we get back, Lucas is going to enter the
lightning round.
Perfect. I have to piss so badly. I'll be right back.
Keep that in, Richard. Keep that in. Oh my god. Do you ever find yourself doing a mundane activity with nothing to keep you from gouging your eyes out or sticking a pencil through one ear and out the other? Uh-huh. Well, then perhaps I could introduce you to music. Music comes in a variety of different types, flavors, and colors. Theorists say that it's the best thing to introduce to your life since food. So go out and get some and make your life just a little bit more bearable. And we're back. Lucas, are you ready to enter the lightning round? Is there a god or like...
Lightning round.
Ready as I'll ever be.
All right, put however much time it takes to bake this cookie on the clock. Lucas, is there a god?
Yeah, probably.
Shakira's voice in Danny DeVito's body or Danny DeVito's voice in Shakira's body?
DeVito's voice in Shakira's body.
Are hot dogs sandwiches?
No.
You're having the best day of your life. What happens next? Another amazing thing or something terrible?
There'll be bad stuff.
Lions, tigers, or bears?
Lions?
Is 0 a number?
No.
Would you rather give up cheese or naps?
Cheese?
Bow ties or suspenders?
Neither.
Have you ever paid more for a meal than you made in a week?
Probably.
Neapolitan or spumoni?
I don't know.
No one's looking.
Neapolitan.
No one's looking. Do you put the cart back or leave it in the parking lot?
Put it back every time.
If you had the power to see the future but couldn't change it, would you use it?
No.
Over or under?
Under.
Pineapple and pizza or fist fight?
A fist fight.
Can billionaires be ethical?
No.
Kill the spider or get an adult?
Get, and neither. Don't kill the spider.
Kill an adult. Got it.
Kill
Red or
an
blue?
adult. Sorry?
Red or blue?
Oh, red.
Is there a price for you to give up your passion forever?
No.
Salsa or Lindy Hop?
Salsa?
Dog or cat?
Both.
Which one of your
Cat,
parents
cat
settled?
dog.
Cat dog. Which one of your parents settled?
Neither.
Sunny side up, scrambled, or hard boiled?
Sunny side up, but like over hard.
Which do you max out first? Intelligence, charisma, or strength?
Charisma? Is this on other people? What? Just in general?
Yourself.
Oh, and myself? I don't know. Charisma, whatever.
Did you ever cheat on a test in school?
Absolutely.
Pizza or pasta?
Pasta.
Popsicle or Klondike bar?
Klondike.
Are we alone in the universe?
No.
Would you rather have your inner monologue sound like Gilbert Gottfried or Fran Drescher?
Gilbert.
Are Cheez-Its addicting?
No.
Congratulations, Lucas. You've survived the lightning round.
Nailed it.
What lightning round question would you like to ask me and in turn be asked to future guests?
Kanye, yes or no? You already said no, and you already lost points in my book.
I did. There's no explanation, but I'm going to explain myself anyway. The music, yes. The person, no.
The Kanye question for me is like, especially for other music people, is will we see eye to eye? Do you like Kanye? Like, if you don't like him, we're probably not gonna be right for each other.
You're
I don't
probably
know.
not a good musician.
Probably. But I understand. He's a bad person probably.
Controversial topic.
Yeah.
How's it going though? I like it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Anything you want to plug, recommend, places people could find you or your content?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm in a band called Storefront Church, if that wasn't clear from the first 2.5 hours. But yeah, you can find us anywhere you find music. On Instagram, storefront_church, probably where I'm most active on social media. And that's about it. Thanks for having me on there, Ike.
Oh, of course. Thank you, man. Also, I'd highly recommend checking out The Gift
Thank you.
on Spotify. It is a quite literal banger.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for being my guest today, Lucas. And special thanks to my editor, Richard Ashford, and my composer, Joshua Gibbons. And especially thank you, everybody listening at home or wherever you found time to appreciate this. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, or just share it with a friend. Every little bit helps. Or if you already have and are out of episodes to listen to, don't worry, we put out a new episode every Monday at midnight on Soundcloud at Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves, or on YouTube at Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast, all one word with an ampersand in the middle. And remember, folks, you park in a driveway, you drive on a parkway, but you don't poo in a pool, because that's gross. And there's a bathroom like 15 feet away. Have a good one.